So I has a brew. I'm sat in front of my PC for a change because I want to talk about laptops. And this is still one of the questions I get asked the most, which is what's the best laptop to get? And with university coming up, this is one question that comes up all the time, and it's the one I get comments on, old videos about, I get messages about, I get ads about. And so I thought I'll cover it in 2015 and kind of go from there because it's an interesting thing to talk about. Before we go any further, basically the most basic bit of advice I can say to you is any laptop you buy now will last you for 3 years. It will do word processing, it will do the internet, and you don't really have to worry about it. So if all you need is a laptop to do the internet on, check Facebook, check like lecture notes, word process, write essays on, literally any laptop is going to be fine for you. So just pick up anything, the cheapest, whatever you can get. You like the colour, you like the brand, you like whatever, it's going to last you however long it's going to last you. Obviously pick and choose in terms of weight, but basically most laptops are the same. They've all got the same kind of space in terms of hard drive capacity. They've all got about 4 gigs of RAM. They've all got some rubbish CPU, which is going to be fine. Now, if you're going to do something a bit more than just word processing and the internet, then you need to start thinking a little bit more about what the specs are and stuff like that. There's really only 3 kind of things you need to worry about, or maybe 4, aside from physical characteristics. In terms of specs, really all you need to be worrying about is hard drive space, how much hard drive space you need, what kind of hard drive as well, that kind of links into it, either a hard drive, just a traditional hard drive or an SSD, what kind of CPU you're going to need. Are you going to need Core i7? Are you going to need like a really horrendously over-the-top, overclocked beast of a machine? Are you going to need dedicated graphics? And how much RAM are you going to need? So those are kind of like the 4, maybe 4.5 questions you need to be asking yourself when you go out and buy a laptop, because if you're going to be doing stuff like video editing, you need something that's half reasonable, half powerful. If you're going to be doing something to do with mathematics and you need a mathematics data program, for instance, like Stat Graphics, or I'm just trying to think of any other programs I've dealt with in the past. Any big data kind of stuff needs a huge CPU, so certainly it's worth going and getting Core i7. Now, if you're still a bit confused as to what any of this actually means, so hard drive space should be reasonably simple. The more hard drive space you have, the more stuff you can store. Now, if you're a student, you're probably only going to need about 500 gigs, and even then it's probably still a bit overkill. If you want to store HD movies, then yes, okay, you need to properly have a huge hard drive, about a terabyte. But I would say just go with the 250 gig SSD, that'll do you for what you need to do. Use Dropbox, use some cloud services as well to be able to store stuff there, and just do that. There's no point wasting money on extra space which you probably don't really need. A 250 gig SSD is good for most people. It's not good for me, and it's certainly not good for most geeks, because they need something a bit bigger for them to store torrents or for them to store games or whatever the hell they want to do. Now RAM is really important. The more RAM you have, kind of essentially the more you can do with it in terms of programs, in terms of speed as well. So if you had 16 gigs of RAM, it's better to video edit in, and better for things like Photoshop, and better for big huge programs that are really heavy. Certainly things like data mining programs, it's handy to have more RAM, because then it means that things can be stored in RAM as opposed to them being stored in virtual memory instead. So yeah, certainly the more RAM you can get, the more you can afford. Go and get it. For video rendering and video editing, 16 gigs is more than enough. 32 is nice, 64 is just overkill. Really don't need anything. I don't really need anything like that, especially in a laptop. Now, a lot of you will ask me, well, is it worth getting a MacBook? I'm a media student, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. Is it worth me getting one of these over a Windows device? The short answer is no. The only advantage to getting a Mac, apart from if you've used Mac in the past and you prefer it over Windows, is build quality. And that's literally the only difference between getting a Windows laptop and getting a MacBook. The build quality is insane. You can't really there's no Windows equivalent to a MacBook in terms of build quality, in terms of how it feels, how it's designed. There's just nothing. There's people try to copy it and it's just not the same. It's metal, it's pretty damn good. Specs are pretty good as well, obviously depending upon where you go. If you're down the MacBook Pro route, then pretty much all the specs are fine for what you need to use anything for. The screen is superb, battery life is great. So yeah, I mean, if you're umming and ahhing about getting a MacBook and you're like, oh, I need somebody to justify why I want to get one, just get one. If you want to get one, just buy one. There's no point me telling you to go out and buy one. If you want one, just go and get one. There's no point you know, if you're stuck between, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, if you're considering a MacBook, just go and get one. If you're considering it, just do it. You can boot camp it, it's fantastic. There's the only downside for me personally is Mac OS. I don't like Mac OS, but that's kind of it. And some of you will ask about things on the Microsoft Surface Pro. I would probably be inclined to steer away from that because it's a lot of money. Specs pretty good, but the keyboard's crap, and the thing is, for the money you can get something a lot better for a lot less money. It's the same with Mac. Like, you can get a lot better spec for less money. So it kind of depends. I wouldn't be inclined to suggest you get them by a Surface Pro 3 because they're a lot of money, and to be honest, you may as well get a MacBook because the build quality is probably a little bit better, spec is equivalent to the same, and if you are down that whole route of, you know, Mac versus Windows, and you're like, oh, I don't know, just go down the Mac route. It's just going to be easier for you in the long run. It's probably not going to be easier in terms of running programs you want to run, but it's still pretty cool to go down that route. Now, graphics-wise, graphics isn't the big thing you need to necessarily worry about. An Intel 4000 HD is probably going to do most of what you need to be able to do. Certainly you can video edit and video render on an Intel 4000 HD, even a 5000 HD, and I think there's now a 6000 HD, which is integrated graphics. It does the job. It'll do you for whatever you want it to do for. I would say go and just use that. There's no... Unless you're going to be doing gaming, and I say gaming, I mean like proper hardcore, I want everything maxed out kind of gaming. If you're going to do that, just get a desktop, don't get a laptop, because you're going to spend a lot of money basically paying for everything to be contained within one device. And I know a lot of you will be like, yeah, but I'm going to uni and I've not got any space. Wait until your second year, wait until your third year when you've got a house or when whatever and you've got more space. Don't take a desktop into halls. I would say it's probably not worth it. It kind of depends. If you've got the space and you've got the transport for it, then yeah, go ahead. And it's not good to be walking around uni with a gaming laptop. They're heavy as hell. They're probably about 5 kilos. 7 kilos even, and they're just too huge, they're too big, they're too heavy. I wouldn't recommend getting one unless you already have one already, or unless you need to take it to like a LAN gaming event and you prefer them or whatever. But graphics certainly aren't the be all and end all unless you're doing gaming, so I wouldn't be hung up on graphics. Most laptops with a decent CPU probably have dedicated graphics in anyway, which are going to be enough for your video editing and video rendering and all that other kind of stuff. So I think that's pretty much it. I've kind of gone through this a little bit too much and I've talked way too much, but obviously you can hit me up on Twitter at AzzyChill and send me any questions about laptops. Like, I'm thinking about getting this laptop, what should I get? Don't ask me what's the best laptop for you unless you can really specifically drill down to what you need that laptop to be able to do. Tell me what you're kind of going to be doing, what kind of programs you're going to be running. Don't just say, what's the best laptop for me, I'm going to uni. Don't tell me that, because I'll ask you loads more questions, or I will just ignore you. You can also email me, aaron@azzychill.com, any questions and stuff like that if you want to do it in private. Best place though is definitely down in the comments, because then other people can see my answers and my responses, and it's always interesting to get other people's input and feedback on what I've talked about as well. So I think that's pretty much it, but apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video.